when you're a young gay man living in this world, there's so much thrown at you on a regular basis that tells you you are not the same. And in that moment, just like holding Stella for the first time with Josh, I felt like everything that I had ever wanted and everything everyone else had ever got just handed to them was happening to me, and I felt like I was normal.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, candid conversations that count. When you go out to a bar on a Saturday night as a wingman for your single mate, you don't usually expect to meet the love of your life or the father of your children. But sometimes it happens. It did to Josh and Sean Szeps, whose life together began in that very unromantic of places, a New York dive bar. It's a beautiful love story with twists and surprises, and they join me now. Hello, lovers.
Hello.
Hello.
I would like to start at the beginning, which is how you both met.
That can either be a romantic story or a really dingy story, depending on how we spin it.
Yeah, let's go dingy then.
We were.
Obviously.
I was living in New York City, and my roommate wanted a wingman to go to a gay bar with him. And so the two of us and a female friend of his all went to this gay bar, which sounds like it's sophisticated because it's called the Ritz.
But it's the exact opposite. It's one of those places you go in and you think, did I get my shots?
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's the Ritz in an ironic way.
That's right.
Yeah. 100%. And I was actually a uni student, and I was not living in New York. I had come to audition for a Broadway play that I got cut immediately for and was going out to drink my sorrows.
You say you're a wingman for a friend to go to a gay bar. Were you in fact gay at this time?
That's a very good question. I've never been a huge fan of your labels. I'd had a long and healthy relationship with a girl while I was back here in Australia, but had always been into guys and girls. And just sort of, I think the process of coming out for me was more a process of not realising that I was gay, but realising that everybody else wasn't into members of the same sex the same way that I was. I just, if that makes any sense. Like it wasn't I had always assumed when I was in my teens that because I liked girls, that everybody found appealing people appealing and attractive people attractive and charming people charming, that would sometimes spill from friendship into physical affection or even into love. And it was the process of realising that that was abnormal that sort of was my kind of awakening in my late teens and early 20s. So I was going to that bar. By then, yes, by this stage, I was already, I 30?
Yeah, 32.
I think.
And why were you living in New York?
Because I wanted to. I'd always thought that New York was the centre of the universe, for good or ill. And when I was in my early 20s, I was working in radio here in Australia, working for Mike Carlton, who at the time was on 2UE. And I had taken a year off between high school and uni and travelled around the world with a backpack on. And the moment I hit New York, I was like, oh my goodness, it's Woody Allen, it's Dave Letterman, it's everything I've always loved. There's actual steam coming out of the grates on Broadway. There are yellow cabs honking at people. Look at the neon lights. Like it was total cliche. And I sort of vowed to myself that at some point I would come back and work in broadcasting in the States. I knew I wanted to work in TV or radio. And so I just sort of did. I said to Mike Carlton at the time, I want to go and study improv comedy at UCB Theatre, which is this great improv school. It was set up by Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and some Saturday Night Live people. And at the time I was writing and voicing satirical political sketches. And I said, look, I could just do it from over there and email you the audio files, and technicians at 2UE can stitch them together and they can be ready to go at 7 a.m. So that's the long story short. So I went to New York and I basically spent 12 years in New York, and I only came back a year ago when the two of us moved. So all of our lives really have been in the Big Apple.
And what about you, Sean? Were you trying to be an actor? Were you an actor?
I was not ever successful at being an actor. I danced my entire life. I started at 2 and sang and acted and went to university for dance. And my mom was very, very, very clever. And she said, if you want to pursue this career, if being creative is like inside you and you can do nothing else, you should. But I'm going to put something in front of you. I'm going to give you a little challenge. And if you accept it, your life will be great. I will pay for your university in full. And if you're listening to this and you're not Australian, then you know that in America, you're paying a lot of money, right? She said, if you get another degree, a backup, I will pay for your full university. And so I did. And so when I moved to New York, when I met Josh, one of the first things he said is, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a dancer." And he just walked away from me. He was like, "Bye."
Why did you walk away?
Because my dad was an actor, and my brother had tried to be an actor, and my mother had been a soap star in the 1970s and a model, and I had so many friends who were wannabe actors. Like, the idea of going through the whole rigmarole of somebody going to auditions and trying to make it as a star is just so uninteresting to me.
Also, every
At least
single
was.
gay man in New York
That's
says
true.
to you, "I'm a dancer."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, what do you really do?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm a bartender for 11 years." So I think he thought that was me and just like booked it. And actually, I stopped acting because of Josh's dad. The first time we met,
Oh.
in the best way.
sounds sad.
No, in the very best way. I met him for the first time in New York City. They came to visit. I knew he was a famous actor from Australia in like the 70s.
And just for people who don't know my dad, if they remember Mother and Son, that sitcom on the ABC during the 80s and 90s, he was the brother, Robert, in Mother and Son, and he was a successful theatre actor here as well. So anyway, carry on.
So we were having a conversation about the struggle and how I was this young 21-year-old trying to make it as a star, dating someone 10 years older than me who was also in a similar industry. And Josh wasn't struggling at all at that time, but it was interesting to hear his timeline of the decade that I had in front of me. And he said, some years you're killing it, and the next year it's a struggle. That's a part of being in the entertainment industry. And so I'm dating someone who's going through it, but we're new, and I'm seeing above him his father, who was still auditioning that same year, still going to the next call, still getting cut. And he said to me, the same thing he said to Josh, "Is there anything else you can do?" And I said, "To be honest, there's a ton of other things I could do." And he said, "Do you love those other things?" And I was like, "I actually like a lot of them." He was like, "Do those things."
Wow, because the thing that's always struck me about some of the arts, like dancing and singing and acting, is that in some ways it doesn't matter how good you are. You have to rely on someone else to pick you to do the thing. So there's no power and no control in it.
There's definitely a lack of control. And I also felt like, as someone who's quite anxious, and a lot of creative people naturally are because there's rejection and you have to cope with that, I needed stability in a way that the creative industry, and obviously Josh can talk more about it because he works in it, just does not give you. And so if you know that about yourself and there are other things you could do and you might even love that thing equally, then maybe you should do the other thing.
When you walked away, what happened then?
The very first thing he said to me is, "Santa Claus called, he wants his hat back."
Oh, what
I
were
said
you
that.
wearing,
I was
Sean?
a red Santa Claus hat, not hung around Christmas on April 26th. So I snuck it off my head. He came back to me maybe 15 minutes later, made a joke about the fact that don't ever listen to someone if they tell you to take your hat off. Own yourself. And I instantly was like, this is the man. Like, someone who's going to come over and teach you a lesson about owning yourself after he just made fun of me, I say in air quotes. So he had that humor thing right away that I was like, he could hit me right now and I'd be like, "You're so funny."
Banter. There was instant banter.
Instant banter?
Instant connection. It was definitely one of those kind of
Ka-ching moments.
100%.
Was it for you, Josh?
Yeah, it was. And I'm very interested in science and the mind and behavior and so on. And so I am usually skeptical when people make bold claims about how certain they were of something in the past. But in my phone, to this day, Sean is listed the way that I first wrote his name, which is Sean and then a full stop.
Boom.
And it's the only person
Last
in my
man
entire
ever.
address book.
I thought you were going to say, Sean, my husband.
No, but that's close enough.
I'm a bit
That's
literal.
as good as I could do.
Sean, full stop.
Sean full
Yeah.
stop, which is interesting.
Ah, that's quite beautiful. So then what happened?
Then a funny story. My brother was getting married in Finland to a Finnish girl, obviously. Be a strange place to go. It's two Australians.
Pretty far.
Exactly. We just like saunas.
Very cold.
We love the ice and snow. So I left. Sean went back to New Hampshire. I went to Finland.
So that night, hook up? Non-hook up.
No hookup. No
Josh
hookup.
would not let that happen.
Party pash?
I thought you wouldn't let that happen.
No, I was like, I could come home with young kid.
No,
It was
because
just-
I think after our first date, I thought you nixed it on after our
second
first
date,
Anyway.
I said, I don't have sex on the first date because I had standards.
Okay, maybe we.
yeah,
Anyway,
just
it
a
was
kiss.
So the first night,
first
just a
night,
kiss.
nothing.
Just a kiss,
Just
yeah,
a
yeah.
kiss. Went home. Went to Finland. I get off the plane in Germany where I was spending one night at a friend's place, and I'm totally jet lagged and I'm exhausted. It's late at night and I'm on the metro in Germany from the airport to my friend's place. And at this stage, iCloud has just started being a thing. The idea of having devices synced up to each other is brand new, and I had been trying to figure it out. And I'm falling asleep on the metro, and I wake up, the doors are open, and I realise it's my stop, and I race off with my bags, and as the doors close, I literally see my iPhone sitting on the seat next to me of the metro as the train pulls away.
So up until that point, the entire time he's traveling, we're texting. We texted the next morning. We texted at lunch. He was making a bunch of jokes. So when that door closed was the moment I got ghosted, in my mind. To everyone listening, like that time when the boy stops texting
When you go, maybe he lost his phone on a train.
Exactly. I didn't have his number. He didn't have my email or anything. We didn't know each other's last names.
I didn't know his last name.
We'd only met for one night. We just knew first name, Sean full stop. That's it. So managed to get my hands on my laptop and connect to a Wi-Fi and open my address book. There was no Sean full stop there. And then it synced up and I saw the little circle and it was iClouded and then Sean full stop popped up.
Thank you, Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. Because I think it was probably almost a week and a half before he got his phone back. And I was very young. I was moving to New York in 2 days.
For him?
No. When we met,
He's not that crazy.
I said, I'm moving to New York in 30 days. So if you want to make this work, like if you want to take my number, this could actually happen. So we're texting. He ghosts me. I remember saying to my girlfriend, that Aussie prince is, not going to be sweeping me up and making my New York City dreams amazing. Whatever. I'm moving to New York City, the greatest city in the world, in 2 days. And I get a text message literally 48 hours before I moved to New York from Josh. Like, hey, this is what happened to my phone. Are you available in 2 days? And do you have a 3-piece suit? That's the first message back. And so I lie because I'm like, my prince is back. I lie, of course I have a 3-piece suit. Mom, I don't have a 3-piece suit. We need to buy one immediately. She takes me and buys me a 3-piece suit.
She bought him a tuxedo for our first date, which is what Americans call a 3-piece suit.
I was wondering why he needed a 3-piece suit. I thought he was going somewhere
tuxedo,
formal.
black tie.
You were hosting a gala, and Alan Alda and Maggie Gyllenhaal were.
It was the World Science Festival in New York, which I was a moderator for.
So
and
I
we were
sat
invited
on
to
our
the
first date watching him host.
You were 21.
Yeah.
Why did you want to settle down? You were moving to New York.
I think there's something quite interesting about the difference between Josh and I. I came out at 15. So by the time I had met Josh, I was not a 21-year-old. I had long-term relationships with men. I was out to every single member of my family. And by that stage, I was not only a gay person, I was a confident gay person. I knew exactly who I was and I wasn't changing for anybody. So to meet someone who might have been older than me by 10 years felt completely normal. We had both been out to our family. He said to me, like, I'm not interested in dating someone who's just dealing with that. And I would never, after having gone through all of those relationships of dating people who weren't out of the closet or helping them come out to their family, I needed desperately to be with a man, like be with someone who could be at the same level as me. And so it was by no means a settle down. We weren't thinking about that at all. If you look at our timeline, it is quite quick. We moved in together after a year, and we got engaged after 2 and married after 3. But we just instantly knew, and there was like no stopping the kind of excitement, right?
Yep. It was one of those funny things. I was not on the hunt for anybody. I was happily single. I'd been in a almost 3-year relationship about 5 years previously, and I just was very, very at ease in my own skin, enjoying life in New York, and basically had concluded that this whole relationship malarkey was not for me. I mean, why would you want to constantly be around someone who is always going to be contaminating what you want to do with their stupid ideas about what they want to do?
So true.
I mean, still.
Josh, you'd obviously seen app culture, and you'd grown up in dating culture with Grindr and Tinder and everything. Had you decided that wasn't for you?
No, that was. Oh. Yeah, no, I was having a lot of sex and I was having a lot of fun. That's what I liked about not being in a relationship. I don't mean to imply that I was like a lonesome celibate on a monk. I was in New York and I was single and I was in my 20s/30s, and it was a great time in my life. I just thought, why wouldn't you want this to continue as long as you could? And then,
but then full stop.
Then old shithead here shows up, and all of a sudden he steals my heart.
Had you been out for a long time at that stage? And were you out to everyone in your family?
Yes, absolutely.
So when did you start talking about kids?
When Josh and I first met, he said on one of our dates, I think I want to have children. And I was like, I'm not the guy for you then. I do not want to have children. We both grew up. We all grew up in a time where being gay meant you wouldn't have children. Yeah. I didn't know a single person who did. I thought maybe you could adopt, but like, did I want to? And so I just, when I met him, was like, no, I'm going to be a fabulous gay man, making a ton of money, married to another fabulous gay man. Actually, let me edit that. Marriage wasn't an option either, right? So there was not going to be marriage because it wasn't legal. But I guess...
How did you get engaged?
Oh, this is good. So Josh is incredibly romantic and loves to do surprises. That's kind of his thing, but he does them so infrequently that they actually matter. He's not the person...
Polite way of saying that I'm not very romantic on a day-to-day basis.
Except he gets flowers all the time. But what I mean is he will fly my friend to a random country we're traveling in and show up at a hotel. And because he does that one thing 6 months after another surprise, I'm genuinely each time shocked. Versus, there's the flowers again. He did it. Or there's another card or another meal. When he does something, goes
big
all
gestures.
out. Yeah. So I had no idea this was coming at all. We had definitely talked about marriage. I thought he was going to propose to me 3 months before on a trip to Italy. And because I said to him, "Are you going to propose to me?" he called it off.
No, it wasn't just that. I think I needed to give you one last shot. I think there was still a
we got in a fight.
Yeah, there was 1% doubt. And I was like, all right, let's give this another 6 months. Wait for the next holiday.
There you go. So we went to Thailand, and when we arrived, there's like this French guy at the front, and Josh pretends, I learn, to get in like an argument with him. What do you mean the villa's not available? I'm so sorry, sir. It's just, we do not have the villa, and all my apologies. We promise we'll make it up to you. And Josh is angry, and I'm like, shit, we just arrived. This vacation's gonna stink. So we go to our like small villa, again in air quotes. It's like the biggest, most beautiful thing I've ever been to. And 24 hours into the trip, the French guy comes up to us and says, "We'd like to make it up to you." This is my horrible French accent, by the way. I don't have these accents. And he's like, "We'd like to make it up to you. Come up and we'll serve you the most beautiful dinner in the really nice villa." And so Josh is telling me this, and I go, why the hell would we want to have dinner in a place we can't stay in? They want to rub it in my frickin' face? No. He's like, "It's free. Let's do it." So they like bring a golf cart down to our house. Villa. We get in it. They drive us up to the top, and we get in, and there's this beautiful table set with all of these like domed lids, like from Beauty and the Beast. And there's like 2 servant boys standing next to the table, like very serious in these fancy outfits, and I'm very uncomfortable. And the whole time I'm like, why is this so serious? And Josh is like, just go along with it. So something that's going to make a bunch of people listening go, "Aw," is that for the first like 8 years of our relationship, every day Josh said, "Have I told you you're my favorite person in the world?" And then I said, "No, not today." And then he said, "Oops, you're my favorite person in the world." Aww. And so it's a huge part of our relationship. It would make its way into cards and on posters and in our wedding speech. And so the waiter comes over and lifts up the food. We'd like to start the meal. And it says on a card, "Have I told you you're my favorite person in the world?" And I was like, still so naive, and was like, "Oh my God, that's so sweet. Look, they knew that you said that to me." And then the other waiter pulls off another thing, and it says, "Oops, you're my favorite person in the world. Will you marry me?" And I lost it. I cried for 3 hours straight. I was dry heaving. Oh, and at one point...
So then I get up, I go over and I kneel down and I give you the ring, which you don't even let me take out of the ring box to put on your finger. You just grab it and shove it on your finger.
As you would on the greatest day of your life.
And you say, "Yes, of course I will," through like blubbering tears. Yeah. And the tears go on for so long with such intensity that the couple of young Thai boy servants, shall we say, start awkwardly exchanging glances with each other and awkwardly back out of the villa so that they can make their escape, so that they don't have to embarrass themselves with this blubbering jellyfish of a child.
They probably thought that you were saying no.
And so Josh left to make a phone call, and I'm sitting in the room alone with someone who's come to clean the table. And he's just like cleaning the table, and in the background you hear... I start videotaping myself because I want to remember what a crazy mess I am. And so I have a video on my iPhone of me just going, look. I'm like such a mess. Such a great day.
So babies.
Yeah. So we started talking about babies seriously right when we got married. So we had our big wedding in New Hampshire, which is the state I'm from. And I would say days after we started talking seriously.
Yeah, but our opinions then had flipped,
yes,
hadn't they?
Yes.
I didn't want them anymore.
Why?
I think I knew. I think I knew something wise about how difficult they would be and what a commitment they would be, and somewhat like I hadn't wanted marriage. I just sort of felt my desire to have kids had been, and still is actually, more of a kind of intellectual, philosophical thing where I just sort of felt like having children is a fundamental part of what it means to be human, what it means to be alive. And if I got to the end of my life without having experienced that, I would be missing a crucial piece of the jigsaw puzzle. So I want that to be part of the roller coaster. But I don't love babies. And I don't love nappies. And I don't love sleeplessness. I'm not enchanted by it.
Oh, I do.
I was going to say, but I love those three things. Give me all the nappies in the world, and I love not sleeping too. But the tables had turned because I realized that I had put limitations on myself because of what I thought was possible. And when I went deep inside my heart, I realized I only ever wanted to get married. I just didn't think it was a possibility. And I only ever wanted to have children and the white picket fence. I just didn't know that I would be able to. And so to meet someone at the perfect time and to be asked to marry him and to say yes, and then to be able to legally go and sign the papers, it was just all in front of you. And the same thing happened with kids. So after we got married, I was quite aggressive about it. I was like, this has to happen for me. This is my calling, I think I said to him. I know that I am a dad. That has to happen for me.
I mean, also, you like babies.
Love.
You're one of those strange people who likes the little lizard phase. Which I don't. And so now, even I can just tell from our interactions with our kids that the older they get, the more I'm able to enjoy them because they have little personalities. But when they're very little, Sean was always like, "Oh my God, babies! Oh, they're so cute! Oh, where did you put the toy? Over there? Over there?" I'm like, "Shut up and just get the toy. You're not entertaining me. Be more proactive."
When will you be able to speak?
Perform,
Exactly.
child.
And I don't want them to speak, so we'll tag off.
Was surrogacy straight away the way you thought you'd do it?
No. I think I wanted adoption,
Yes.
didn't I?
Josh had a really beautiful perspective on it all, which was there are so many kids out there in the world that need families. We are absolutely world travelers, international lovers. We loved the idea of adopting from another country. And that's how we started the journey. We went to a session that Josh set up for us almost right away when we got back from New York, an adoption agency. And we were just super opinionated and asking all these questions and looking at all the different agencies. And that just happened to be the time when a girlfriend from college reached out and said, "I just want you to know that if you ever want a surrogate, I want to do it for you for free." And Josh and I were like, first off, I actually think I said, "What is surrogacy?" I knew the idea and theory, but I just didn't understand how it worked. Is she going to be the mom? And we just got excited about that.
What made her make that phone call or reach out in that way?
We didn't end up using her, by the way.
Yeah. So she actually is one of those beautiful, selfless humans. There are a lot of them out there in the world who love being pregnant and think it's such a gift and are stay-at-home mom full-time. She has a lot of kids of her own, and she just wanted to give back and help someone out. And she ended up caring for another guy from Russia, I believe. And so this was just her way of, she had learned about this. She wanted to help me out. We were connected in college. I was one of a few of her gay friends. And so I think she knew that we were serious. She knew that we were a couple and that we were in love and married. And so she just wanted to float the idea.
Why didn't you go with her? And who did you end up going with?
So we actually didn't go with her because right when the process finally kicked off, she was pregnant with another surrogate caring for them. So what we did is we took a year from the time we got married to think about it, to do our research. Josh set up, I think, 8 phone calls with different surrogacy agencies, right?
At least, yeah.
At the time, it was legal in Mexico and...
Mexico, India, Cambodia, a bunch of different countries. So we sort of considered all that.
We tried all the U.S. agencies and all the ones outside just to do interviews. We did Skypes and we did our profiles and...
I mean, it's a funny thing about surrogacy. So here in Australia, surrogacy of the kind that we did is illegal. I mean, we could be jailed for doing what we did here because there's a peculiar alliance, I suppose, between a certain subset of the extreme feminist women's movement and the Christian right, both of which, even though you think of them as antagonists, have quite paternalistic ideas about a woman's womb and don't believe that a woman should have the right to receive any compensation for the use of her womb. And in certain states in the United States, that's not the case. So it's a lot easier and more accessible, and it's better set up. So you're not paying amounts of money that are going to change a person's life, which is partly why we liked the idea of doing it in the States, even though it's more expensive than doing it, say, in Cambodia or Mexico. Because I do think there's, not to judge anybody else, but I find myself slightly queasy morally thinking about the power imbalance between you and someone in Cambodia if you're paying them what, to them, seems like millions of dollars in order to have a kid. Whereas in the States, we just went through a boutique agency, didn't we? And we got matched with a surrogate family. I mean, they only accept a fraction of the
1%.
people who apply.
The eggs come from somewhere different, though, don't they?
That's right.
So you had some decisions to make. You've got the womb. Where do the eggs come from, and whose sperm do you use?
So when I heard about surrogacy, I started Googling around, and I found an article right on that first page that said, I believe it said, mother donates eggs to gay son to help family. And I was like, Josh, what is going on here? This is crazy and cool. And as I started to do more research, realized that there were actually quite a few cases of sisters, cousins, aunts, and mothers helping gay couples donate. And so what I did was I floated the idea by every woman who had my last name. No, I ran it by, my sister and my aunt and my mother and my cousins. I'm really close with a bunch of my girl cousins, and just floated it. And everyone was like, of course, their immediate reaction, yes. My mother was like, I can't, but 100%, I wish I could. This would, I remember her getting emotional. I would have loved to have done that for you guys. And I think at that moment, when you start to realize there's potential here, I remember saying to Josh that night, there's all these moments that straight couples get to have that we miss out on potentially. And I have this vision in my head of my child or children running home and saying, can you help me fill out my family tree? And feeling like Josh might be able to help them because he'll be their real dad, but I won't be. And that sucks. And so when you have right in front of you the possibility of both being connected to the children, to it being the same family tree, there just something came over me, and I remember being really like, Josh, this is going to cost us, no joke, $100,000 more than adoption. But it has to be the path we take if one of these women say yes. And of course, he was supportive, as he has always been. But we did receive a year later, it took a while, a phone call from this person and said, I've made a decision. I know 100% that it's the right thing to do, and I'd like to donate my eggs. So we knew in that moment that Josh would be the sperm donor and that my family would be giving the eggs.
I notice you don't identify the person.
Yeah. It's something I've thought a lot about. I am comfortable telling who it is, and that person is comfortable, and so is Josh. But there is an elephant in the room, and that elephant is our children. I work in social media. Josh works in media. I don't know if there's any couple in the world who's as connected to the digital world for what we do professionally as the two of us. And I talk about my children by name and share photos of them for a living every day here at Mamma Mia and articles on my own blog. And I'm really cautious about what I share because I know, much like with our belief on circumcision, that it should be the child's choice. There are a lot of things, piercing kids' ears, and that get stuck in my head about if I believe they shouldn't get circumcised, then what else do I not believe in? And I don't want to decide that the world can Google who their mother is when they have two dads. One thing we know will happen from the very beginning is that they will be aware of who it is. That's something that my family is all very connected with and wants to be open about. But I'd like Stella and Cooper to grow up, and I'd like them to be a part of that decision-making process.
How did you know it was going to be your sperm, Josh, and not yours, Sean?
Because once you're talking about family, then it has to come from outside the family.
So Josh does not have what I have.
Oh, I don't mean how could you?
Oh.
I didn't mean why didn't you use your family's eggs and your sperm?
Oh, got it.
That would be ick and possibly illegal.
Yes.
I meant.
Why don't you just get him to have sex with his cousin while you're at it?
Right. I meant. I'm such a good journalist with the way I ask questions. Clearly,
You meant why not use a family member of mine's
Correct.
eggs because I don't have any.
Yeah, there wasn't any women on his side.
no eggs available on your side.
Don't have any sisters. Don't have any fertile, willing family members.
So twins.
Twins.
You told me once when I asked you that was deliberate.
Yeah, it was. This is like the weird part of modern parenting, especially for couples, straight or gay, who are going through the IVF journey, is it is not inexpensive. My experience, mainly with women, having conversations with the amount of rounds that some women have to go through, you start to make weird decisions. You start to look at numbers and you stop thinking just for a second about the actual human. And for us, it was, could we be parents of twins? I think we could. Is it the right decision financially for us to attempt? I think Josh will remember the numbers, but...
Well, some friends of ours who were going through IVF at the same time as we did, they're a straight couple in the States, and they would always say, after they had a round of IVF that was unsuccessful, they'd look at each other and go, you want to drive another car off the cliff? Because it's basically like buying a brand new car every time you give it a shot.
And for you guys, there was extra cost because you had egg extraction and surrogacy
Yeah,
costs.
that's right. But for me, it wasn't just financial. I liked the idea of twins. I liked coming back to my brain in a vat attitude towards everything, where it's like, I must have children because having children is what humans do. I sort of thought, why not just have an instant family and get it over and done with? I knew that the baby years were going to be difficult. I believed that it was likely that having 2 babies was not twice as hard as having 1.
Economies of scale.
Well, exactly. I mean, you never meet a couple who've just had their first baby, who've got a 6-month-old, and they never say, and when you say, what's life like, they never say, oh, it's fine, it's just about basically the same. It's just we have a baby. No, it's always a catastrophe.
Yeah.
It's always, oh my God, you wouldn't
true.
believe how. So, if that's going to happen anyway, then you might as well go all in and just get both of them out of the way.
And also,
if all you want is 2 kids, which I did.
Yeah. I remember them telling us that if you put 2 embryos in, it's a 90% chance you have 1.
Yes. So this was the other thing. It's partly to have twins, and it's partly to ensure that at least one of them's going to take.
So you put
Because
2 in to get 2, or you put...
You put 2 in to get 2, but there's only a 50-50 chance that the 2 are going to both take.
And yours did.
Yes, and ours did.
Yeah.
But there's a 90% chance that one of them's going to take, whereas if you only put in 1, there's a 60% chance that it's going to take. So then you have to go through another cycle.
Yeah, I always say to people, this process, and it's long and it's stressful and there is a huge financial burden. We're one of the very lucky few who put our application in, got matched in 6 months, which is the minimum time it takes. The IVF cycle worked one time. We got 24 eggs. When they went through the whole process of embryo creation, we had 11. So all of these numbers are very high. We got matched with our surrogate immediately on the first time, and we went through 1 cycle, and we got twins.
And she was willing to carry twins as well, because she might not have been.
Yeah, exactly.
She's absolutely wonderful. Got to put in a big thumbs up to her, and to any surrogates who are listening, especially in Australia, where it's where they're doing it without compensation. I just a huge thank you. I mean, she already had 3 kids. She'd enjoyed being pregnant. She liked the process of being pregnant. She was a nurse. They didn't need the money. But someone at the hospital where she worked was a surrogate, and so she, like many people, she just sort of found out about it through the grapevine, decided to do it, and as a result of her generosity, we've got kids.
Tell me about the day they were born.
It was quite stressful.
I should probably take this for the details, because
Yes.
you're not going to remember how it actually unfolded.
Just lots of crying.
Wow,
from
you
me.
had a lot of drugs?
No, I'm just crying a lot.
You had an epidural and some pethidine. Things are hazy. Josh.
We were actually living in Los Angeles at the time, so we were packing up the apartment at exactly the same time as we were trying to coincide with the unexpected birth of the twins. And we got a call that she was having contractions and she was going to go to the hospital. So I quickly hopped online and booked a flight that was departing in a couple of hours. We raced out to LAX. It's about a 3.5-hour flight to Minneapolis. And on the plane, which had Wi-Fi, I was getting text messages from them saying that the doctors, she was really not very dilated, and the doctors had told them to go home, but she didn't feel right. And they live an hour away from the hospital. So I said, let me book you a room at the hotel, which is next to the hospital, where we're going to be staying. Don't drive all the way back home. Just at least be there. And we landed and picked up our rental car, and her contractions were getting more and more severe, but she still wasn't dilated. And so they went back to the hospital. And as we were speeding along the highway towards the hospital about midnight or 12:30 a.m. by that stage, we get a sudden text message from her husband saying, "You've got a son."
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with a picture.
Yeah, and he sends a picture. And what had happened was she had a medical condition called a placental abruption, where the placenta dislodges from the wall of the uterus, and that can, in severe cases, be fatal for the baby and not good for the mother either. So she had an emergency C-section. One of the pernicious things about this particular condition is that when you look at it in an ultrasound, you can't tell that the amniotic sac is filling up with blood because it just looks like fluid.
Yeah, fluid.
So you don't realise that the baby is drowning in blood.
Oh, my God.
So luckily, we had one of the world's best medical teams.
And she was so close to the hospital
and she was so
didn't
close
go
to the
home.
hospital. Yep, and so they were able to do a quick C-section, and everything was okay, thank God. And so when we arrived, it was literally like a bad 1980s John Candy and Steve Martin film where we pull up to the front of the hospital, like double parked, like bumping over I almost imagine smashing into a fire hydrant and water going everywhere. A postman with a dog leaping out of the way.
Yeah.
And I pressed the buzzer because the hospital was closed. I pressed the buzzer and they're like, "Hello, can I help you?" And I didn't know what to say. I was literally silent for 7 seconds, and Sean just goes, "Baby, have baby," and the doors just open. They're obviously used to this kind of jabbering idiocy from new parents, and we ran up, and it was so within
6 minutes,
of Stella being born, we were in there, and
so they brought Stella into the room out of the ICU immediately because her placenta had not abrupted, and so therefore she was cleaned off and brought to us immediately and handed to me right away. So we were holding her 6 minutes after she was born. Cooper, obviously, because of the placenta, needed to be cared after for a couple hours, and so we got him in our arms, I guess, 2 hours later.
Yeah, little tubes up his
Little
nose.
tubes.
What was the feeling like?
I feel like when you're a young gay man living in this world, there's so much thrown at you on a regular basis that tells you you are not the same. You can't get married, and you can't have kids, and you can't have this job, and you're not like the rest of us. And in that moment, just like holding Stella for the first time with Josh, I felt like everything that I had ever wanted and everything everyone else had ever got just handed to them was happening to me. And I felt like I was normal. Like, this is exactly what my mom and dad would have wanted for me. Like, that I get to just be a father and marry the person I love and have children and be surrounded by people who support me. And I just didn't think it was possible. And in that moment, it was just like, boom, like you are so lucky. This is so exciting that so many people love you so much to make this happen. It was just obviously the greatest day of my life. Absolutely. Like next to getting engaged and married. But it was like very emotional and powerful and a big psychological kind of like wake up to like, look how far you've come and look how far the world has come that this is happening to you right now.
Did you cry a lot on the babies?
Yeah, of course I did. I was a mess. I think Josh cried and he like doesn't.
Josh, you're a robot. How did
I
you
am
feel?
a robot. I am a robot.
Were you like, this is a baby. This is 2 babies. They are mine. My progeny.
There was a lot of like computer does not compute
Yeah, that's right.
going on. There was a lot of defragging.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like, this is not me. This is not understood. What is Lizard doing in my arms? It was, I mean, I don't know if other people who've had kids can empathize with this, but I think it was terror and disorientation. It was just surreal, and it continued to be surreal really for months. We were fortunate enough that Sean's parents had invited us to spend the first few months of the kids' lives with them in New Hampshire. So we took lengthy paternity leave before coming to Australia. And the whole thing was just a bizarre fog of sleeplessness and confusion.
I don't know if you remember this, but you said in the hospital, this is very Josh, like not me at all, but like evolutionarily, women are carrying children for such a long time that they're establishing a relationship with this child. They have a physical reminder that something's going to change.
Yeah.
And a lot of women scientifically are aware that like the waking up to have to pee becomes the schedule you're going to keep afterwards of having to feed.
Absolutely.
Like that's what's so powerful about women's bodies is it's doing all this work mentally, even though it's a physical thing, and we missed out on that. I'm going to get dagger emails after this, but like we got to drink the whole 9 months, and we lived in a different state than our surrogate.
No stretch marks, no stitches.
No stretch mark. Well, I did gain a bunch of weight as
No
if I was
no
pregnant.
hemorrhoids.
No.
Well, not baby related anyway.
Yes. So I remember Josh saying, like, for us, this is a very different experience.
Yeah, it's not the
become a
slow
dad.
on ramp that women get. It's 0 to 100 in just a split second.
Or even that the partners of women get when they're with them throughout the pregnancy.
And one of the most, if anyone listening is expecting, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got when we were expecting was from one of my great mentors, Judith Whelan, who works at the ABC, used to be the editor of the Sydney Morning Herald. And she said, she looked me in the eye before we had the kids, and she said, something you need to remember, don't be afraid of them. They don't know anything. You know everything. Don't fear them. I was like, what's she talking about, this strange lady? And the moment they were born, I was like, okay, just
That's
remember
very
that.
wise.
Remember that, because they are terrifying. They're the most terrifying thing in the world, because you have total responsibility for them and you don't know what you're doing.
That also happens to be the time that Josh created the mantra that guides our entire parenting style. He said, I know this is going to be hard for you, especially because of your personality type, which is prone to anxious thoughts. Let's treat our firsts like our seventh. And it was really hard for me to wrap my head around at first. I thought, here he goes with some like big idea. But what I have learned is it's a constant reminder of us reminding ourselves that, like, parents who have had multiple kids just chill out a bit. They get comfortable. They don't freak out about everything. If their child falls and gets a boo-boo, they know it's going to go away. And for us, it's been, I think, that conversation with her plus being parents in 1 second, it was just like, let's not freak out. Let's just.
But then we freaked out anyway.
Yeah, then we freaked out. But it's still,
Yeah, but even to be able to remind yourself of those two things, I think that's genius.
we pick it up a lot. I actually say it often. I say it on the Baby Bubble podcast. I do bring up frequently that, like, if you're not afraid of them and you remind yourself that
They haven't done it before either.
Exactly. And also, we're human beings who have made it this far.
Yeah.
And we started with literally, like, in caves. Like, and we're here. Like, we didn't need a baby book.
No.
You didn't always have family members to pass it down. You had instinct. And
Also, I mean, we know that we're fairly good people and we have quite a lot of common sense and we're reasonably smart. And I've seen how bloody stupid so many parents are. And I'm like, if their kids survive, ours will survive. It's
Yeah.
got to be pretty easy. People are idiots.
all you got to do is love them.
Sure. If you
Try
want
your best.
Why'd you move to Australia? Why'd you come home? Because it wasn't home for you. It was home for you, though, Josh.
Yes, it was home for me. Well, that's a funny word, isn't it? I have spent
Yeah.
more of my adult life in New York than I have in Australia. But, of course, where you grow up is home. And we had always thought... Sean was very enthusiastic, at least outwardly, about the prospect of moving to Australia and raising kids in Australia specifically. Once you know that Australia exists, it's hard to imagine raising children anywhere else. And so that was sort of in the ether. I had my biggest job had been helping to create and then being a presenter of HuffPost Live, which was this vast online kind of news talk network that the Huffington Post had created, and that ended. The wheels came off that thing, and so when we were in LA, I was sort of a little bit listless and was coming back here to present ABC Radio whenever people would be away. And it was actually Judith, who I mentioned earlier, who I sort of had to go to and say, listen, I'm about to have kids. You can't expect that I'm going to keep popping back to do 6 weeks of filling in on ABC Radio Sydney when I have children. Like, so either find a way to bring me out here if you want me to work at the ABC, or I'll see you in 2025 when the kids are ready when we're ready to bring the kids out. And to her eternal credit, she was able to knock together heads in Radio National and get me a Radio National show, which is a weekly panel show about the ethics of things in the news. It's called The People Versus. You can get it as a podcast as well. She guaranteed me, I think, about 20 weeks of fill-in on ABC Radio Sydney. So I do Summer Breakfast when Wendy Harmer and Robbie Buck are away, and Drive when Richard Glover is away sometimes. And also a podcast, which is no longer around. But so by sort of stitching this together, she was able to actually offer us a package, even when there was no job for me to take. And we thought, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. We don't know whether this will still be around in 2 years when we'd actually rather move. Just take the chance. So we jumped.
To come as the trailing spouse, Sean, that's challenging. I mean, you had little kids. The twins were a year old.
No,
Not
two,
not even 3 months
yeah,
yet.
between 2 and 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fun time to move continents. Okay.
Yeah.
You were a full-time carer.
That's right. It
And-
was crazy. And it took us, like, he's presenting it as the offer came through and then we made the decision. But I mean, it was 3 months of very serious conversations and fights and happy tears and very confident on a Monday, and then by Wednesday regretting it and telling no one in my family, and I'm an oversharer, knew I had to really kind of keep it in. I knew in theory it was right. I I wanted to raise kids here. I knew it was right for Josh professionally. I wanted his family to be a part of the experience of me. They didn't even really know me that well. But yes, you're right. I knew I was walking away from my career, which at that time was going very well in LA and in New York.
What were you doing?
I've been working in advertising my entire career. I've always been in social media since the very beginning of the industry. I'm one of the lucky few who went to university when it was starting. And so when I went and entered the workforce, there was no one who had ever taken a class in social, and I had. And so I jumped on that industry and that career, and I kind of climbed the ladder in the New York advertising agency and worked with just some of the biggest brands in internationally, eBay and Nespresso and Spotify and Nestle and San Pellegrino. And so it was hard. I was like, I'm going to walk away from that to be a dad. I'm also going to move to a new country. I'm not going to know anyone except for Josh's friends, who are all either much older than me or have kids that are much older than me or don't know me at all. I'm going to have to establish a relationship with his parents. I've met them obviously many times, but on a vacation for 5 days or on a vacation for 7. And so that was really what we were struggling with, was not is it right, but like, how am I going to cope with this?
Because that puts a lot of pressure on.
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, it was. There's no point in mincing words about it. Like the process of moving to the other side of the world is itself wildly stressful. Just the waiting for the shipment to get here and it being delayed and all your boxes being held up and it being hopeless. OSS World Movers, don't use them.
With newborn twins, it's
ever.
Yeah.
a very heightened degree of complexity.
Then getting the NBN set up and making sure that your mobile phones are working, and having those, and then having twins is also another hugely stressful thing. Starting a new job is another hugely stressful thing. Moving to another country that you're not from is a hugely stressful thing for Sean. And all of these things piled on at the same time. And it was certainly the worst experience that either of us have had in our relationship, I would say, those first sort of 6 to 8 months.
Did you think you'd made a terrible mistake?
I did, yeah, absolutely. I think when you're sleep deprived, it is impossible for you to think logically. And so Josh had said long before we came, we will laugh about how stressful it is one day. And we're actually already laughing about it because we're loving the life we have now. But when you're sleep deprived and Josh is trying to have a rational conversation with me, I'm like, get the away from me. Like, just couldn't look at it. Like, you're so tired that you can't even... People kept on saying, how's Sydney? I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I'm trying to keep 2 humans alive and also myself alive and also not try to kill my husband who made me move here. And so it was traumatizing for both of us, as much for me as it was for him. Because Josh, and I'm sure he can talk about it better than me, but I think from an outsider, was witnessing him step into being a father and put the weight on his shoulders of the decision. We're here because of me.
Oh, yeah.
He had to
I
make
made you do this.
Totally.
He had to make all the money because my salary, which was not horrible, we had just completely wiped out. And the job that he had just started, it's basically an audition. Do a good job, you continue to have work. Don't, your family has nothing. And so it was equally...
The stakes were high.
Oh, yeah.
They were. I mean, It was a horrible combination of me feeling guilty. Look, I think I always felt that in the long run, I think we knew that it was going to be difficult, and I knew that in the long run it would settle down and we would have perspective on it, and that I shouldn't assume that what it feels like 3 months in is what it's going to feel like 3 years in. But I'd be lying if...
But you don't know that
if I didn't say that. Yeah, that even that at the time there was probably I would have given it maybe a 70-30 chance that 70% chance that it would work and 30% that it wouldn't. And if it hadn't worked, it wouldn't just mean us moving back to the States. It would mean us probably breaking up and everything going south. And that was a real possibility.
There's not enough Kleenex in the world to deal with your tears over that.
No.
So where are things at now? We're now a year and a half away from the move. You've been here for about 18 months.
Basically.
Exactly.
Tell me about where things are at.
So the first 7 months that we were here, really the first 9 months of their lives, was I won't mince words either, a shit show. Like, just sleepless nights and not being able to think rationally and being upset about being here, but also not really loving parenting, like just shocked at how hard it was. And
oh, it's awful. I mean, anyone who says they like being a parent to small babies is either crazy or lying.
Well, twins. And it's lonely.
it is
Not even
very
just
lonely.
twins. It's relentlessly. The thing that people don't tell you about having newborn babies is I was fully emotionally prepared for total chaos. I was really geared up and I was like, I can take this on. What people don't tell you is that life with little babies is not chaotic at all. It is relentlessly, gruelingly unchaotic and
monotonous.
boring.
Yeah.
It's monotonous and boring.
It is like being put through just the most boring ringer you've ever. Like just when you hope that you might be interested in something, a stupid baby needs the same feed that it's had 25 times in the past week that you were just so over. And I think that was what was difficult for us. And what changed when you ask, like, how is it now, is that between the ages of 8 months and 14 months, babies become human beings.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you've got these two fantastic little friends who are tottering around
We
and
have
pointing
two
at
roommates.
things and going, dog! when they're pointing at a bird.
Yeah. I also
Yeah.
think like that same time around 7 months was also a eye-opening experience for us as far as what it meant to be gay men in Australia having kids. It was strange at first. We were shocked, and I was shocked specifically at what an anomaly I was here. We lived in New York City and Los Angeles. The gays are everywhere, and there are gays with kids everywhere. Like, you're just used to seeing them. And so when I came to Sydney, I had been to Mardi Gras a couple times, so I knew that y'all supported your gay people. But every single person that spoke to me was, where's your wife? Go home and thank your wife. Are you the babysitter today? Are you the sitter? Are you the nanny? Josh would say, "This is my husband," and people would be like, "Are these your kids, or are you watching them?" Like, people, we were shocked at like how kind of people are not mean here. If you say we're gay and we have kids, they go, "That is so sweet." It's just that they don't think about it as their first option because they don't know many gay couples who have kids. And so for the first 7 months, I think I was like railing against like, what's wrong with Aussies? Like, I just expected people to be like, where's your partner? Or, so at the 7 month mark when the kids start to come to life, or 9 months mark, Josh and I also started to kind of come to terms with like the voice we had a little bit. This is so silly that I'm going to say this, but I work in social media. Like the search, Josh was talking about being a parent. He was talking about it a lot more. So people were searching for that. Who are Josh Szeps twins? And so my blog started to get all this new traction of Aussies for the first time. 50% of my traffic is Australian people interested in our story. And I said to Josh, I think this could be a path I go down, is like talking about what it means to be a gay person raising twins in Australia, and both. Well, Josh has a profile, like maybe this could be a thing. And so I think I started to think about it differently. For the first 7 months, and I am mortified that I'm about to admit this, but when people would say, how's your wife, or where's your wife, I'd say, she's at work. I just lied.
Because it's a conversation you didn't want to have?
Yeah, and like you become a 13-year-old boy all over again, and you're like, do I really want to be the person leading the charge today? And so I'd get in an Uber and someone would say, oh, what your wife's going through is harder than you. And I'd say, yeah, you're right, even though I knew I was the one who was dealing with it harder. But around that 7 month mark, I started to realize, like, I'm going to just own this shit. I am going to be the one that's like, I don't do it all the time, so let's add a caveat there. But I'm going to talk about it. And that is how I like manifested to work for Mamma Mia. I was like, I'm going to share my story. I'm going to talk about what it's like to be gay. I'm going to change my blog to be less about, the best crafts for your kids. And I'm going to like tell the truth. I'm going to open up about what it means to be a gay dad. And I think all of that at the same time, it became really, really fun. And now, we said the other day, like, it feels like there's 4 people who live in the house. The kids have brains, and they're funny, and they manipulate us, and they want to have dance parties every single day. And it is like living with 2 roommates that we actually like.
And they're really good dancers.
They're so good dancers.
Put on some Queen or some ABBA, and they go absolutely nuts. Yeah.
Well, we are so thrilled to have you as the host of the Baby Bubble podcast with Zoe Marshall. You're just wonderful. And Josh, to see you back on TV shortly. We're hosting an ABC News Breakfast on the weekends.
Yep.
So you'll be working 7 days a week.
Yes,
Yeah,
don't let him say
thereabouts.
that he's not. He
That's
is.
great.
Basically.
And Sean, you're back at work.
That's right. I'm working full-time at an advertising agency called True in Sydney that I love, and I'm writing for Mamma Mia and hosting a podcast, and I have my own blog, so we're keeping busy. Thank
Lots
you
of
so
love.
much.
Thanks,
You
Mia.
too.
Thanks for listening to No Filter. If you want to hear more from Sean, and how can you not after listening to that glorious interview, you can hear him on our new parenting podcast. It's called The Baby Bubble, and he and his co-host Zoe Marshall talk about all things babies and parenting. This podcast has got a cult following, not just of new parents, but of people who think they want to have kids one day or have already got kids, and a whole lot of people who just really like to listen to Sean's take on life. And if you want to hear more from Josh, you can hear him on his own podcast. It's called #WeThePeople Live, or you can go and see his comedy show. It's called #YouToo, Why Social Media is Ruining Everything. Tickets are at comedyfestival.com.au. No Filter is produced by Liza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on Mamma Mia.